In these times when everybody wants to just throw the ball, Dan Campbell says, nah, we're going to be old school, baby. We're going to talk about being old school like me here on the barbershop, Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise and Wiggy's ready with his scissors and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
That's right. It is your team every day here on Locked On NFL. We thank you for making us your first listen. We can be found everywhere. That's right. Wherever you get your podcast, whether it's on YouTube and on YouTube page or wherever you get your podcast audio-wise. I just want to welcome to the new Locked On NFL, bring you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with the help of our local experts that you know your favorites. And they cover the teams like no other. I'm your host, Tony the Barber Wiggins, joined today by Locked On NFL expert Kevin Oestreicher. Man, what's going on with you, bud?
Man, week one officially in the books. We made it. We went through it. Lots of crazy action to talk about. And, man, I mean, look, these teams in week one, when we talk in week 18, they're going to look a lot different.
Yeah, we are going to look a lot different. And I'm glad you're here today because we're going to talk about some physicality. We're going to talk about a lot of things that we have going on. The first thing we're going to do is talk we're going to end up talking about the Dolphins and their big plays and how sustainable that is. And then we're going to go through the fact that the Steelers might have their quarterback already, even though they had one on the bench who's supposed to be starting. I don't believe the Saints, even though they look good. I don't believe them. I don't even think Ross Jackson for Locked On Saints believes in the Saints like that, even though they blew out a bad Carolina team. But we're going to start at the very top with the Detroit Lions. And the reason why I want to start there is because, and I'm glad I have you on the show, because the Baltimore Ravens, the team that you cover every single day, are known to be very, very physical.
Yep.
In the days of thinking about McVay and Shanahan and all of these offenses where they just throw the ball around, Dan Campbell is doing this the old school way. I remember his opening press conference. He talked about eating kneecaps off and all that stuff, and I thought he was absolutely crazy. It seems to have some legs, though, no pun intended, and it looks like it's starting to work. I'm going to actually show you what Matt Derry from Locked On Lions said about this victory that they just had in overtime against the Rams.
There was some rust, there was some sloppy play, but in the end, the Lions get it done and get the victory. 26-20 in overtime. They walk off the Rams on a David Montgomery 1-yard touchdown run. Lions spent their entire time in overtime on their one drive, just pounding the Rams on the ground with Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Give credit to the Lions offensive line and to offensive coordinator Ben Johnson for calling the right plays and going back to what the Lions do best, which is grit and grime and physicality, and that's exactly what they did to win this football game. It was not a masterpiece at all from the Lions tonight. That is for sure. The Rams had their number on numerous occasions, and the Lions nearly blew a 14-point lead, led 17-3, came back at a Jake Bates field goal late to send it to overtime. They win it 26-20. More coming up on our Locked On Lions postgame show.
That's my man Matt Derry with Locked On Lions. Listen, man, they are playing a physical, old school brand of football. Some people don't think that's sustainable, but it's sustaining like hell right now because they're off to a 1-0 start after making a very, very late appearance in the playoffs last year. Kevin Oestreicher, you cover the Ravens and you're used to that type of football. How do you feel like Matt Campbell and the Lions are doing in terms of trying to establish that type of physicality in Detroit?
I think it's great. And obviously covering the Ravens for Locked On Ravens as being, a witness to that team. Dan Campbell, John Harbaugh, those are players' coaches, man. Like, you want to get up, you want to fight for those guys. You want to bite those kneecaps, man. Like, you want to go at those knees. Like, that's exactly what the plan is, what the goal is. You're right. We're in the era of the McVays, the Shanahans, right? Those elite offensive coaches, those coaching minds that it's that young version of, okay, well, you're just going to get young offensive mind in there and you're going to soar. But the art of a player's coach, I think, to me, is still so important. Not that the McVays and the Shanahans don't get their guys fired up, but I think that the NFL everybody is like, okay, well, that's the only direction the NFL is going. But players, coaches aren't going anywhere. And I think this is a prime example. Detroit, that physicality, the grit and grind that Matt talked about there, it's kind of a lost art in today's game. And I love Detroit's going with it.
I do too. And the thing that people don't really pay attention to, it's a game about blocking and tackling. It's a game that you're asking people who have, let's just say a guy is 21, 22 years old, and he started playing football when he was 6. Now, we can debate whether it's safe or not, but for the last 15 years, these guys have been physical. They've been told that the only way you're going to make it is to knock the hell out of somebody, right? So when they get to the NFL, that's exactly what they want to do. And I think sometimes it's hard for them to adjust to the finesse side of the game. It's easier for them to hear a guy like Dan Campbell who played the game. You're in there lifting weights and you're basically having a car wreck every single play. I think it's easy to adjust to that style of play, and that's why it resonates with players. I'm going to admit to you, though. I'm going to admit to you right now, I said that I thought Dan Campbell would be fired in 2 years, and he has not been fired. And he is kind of, the messaging is different, but he's still playing the type of ball that the Harbaughs play, and he's playing the type of ball that somebody else plays, and that we're going to highlight a little bit in segment 2. Now, the Saints had a game the other day, and they blew out the Carolina Panthers, and it's real easy to think that the Saints have actually arrived. I don't mean to laugh at my man Ross Jackson. I'm gonna let you hear what Ross Jackson had to say.
New Orleans Saints cornerback Alontae Taylor is a dog. I'm Ross Jackson, host of the Locked On Saints podcast, here with your morning after game balls. We're going defense, offense, special teams in this one. On the defensive side, we're going with Alontae Taylor, the cornerback, becoming the first ever New Orleans Saints defensive back in franchise history to record 3 sacks in a single game. 2 of those sacks coming on third down, mastering the art of getting the ball back to the offense. And speaking of the offense, Derek Carr gets the game ball over on that side. 3 passing touchdowns, but only 4 incompletions in this game. Almost even those numbers up. And remember, it took the New Orleans Saints up until week 9 last year against the Chicago Bears to get that type of passing production in terms of 3 touchdowns and an efficient 200 yards in the process. Then on special teams, Blake Grupe, 2 kicks of 50-plus yards, 4 of 4 perfect when it came to field goals, and in a perfect 5 of 5 on extra points as well. He was in his bag. For more, including Dog of the Day, make sure you subscribe to Locked On Saints.
Now, Ross can make anything sound good. I'm telling you, he can make anything sound good. In fact, I want to be a little bit of transparent here when I say that I told him, man, y'all played well. He was like, okay. All right. We played the Carolina Panthers. And you know what? Carolina is awful. They're terrible on the field, off the field, all of that. Julian Council even said it. We were on the show yesterday, and he was like, oh, man, we're not good at all. But I got to give credit. They did what they were supposed to do against the opponent that they were supposed to beat. You can only play who lines up in front of you. And I actually think the Saints surprised me a little bit. I did not think they were going to play that well.
Yeah. And for a division that I know we've talked about it, where there's just like, who's the real winner of this division? Right. I think none of us really thought Carolina was going to be in that conversation, which obviously that pretty much summed that up. But between Tampa, Atlanta, and New Orleans, I think people were kind of talking down on New Orleans a little bit because, everybody likes the shiny new toy in Atlanta with Kirk Cousins, and I was going to utilize these guys, and Baker in Tampa doing his thing. But I still think New Orleans has talent. Now, are they the team that we saw in week 1 against Carolina? Are they going to do that every week? No, they're not going to do that every week. We can be honest about that one. But you're exactly right. That's what I was going to say. They did what they were supposed to do, and they look good doing it. They look good doing it. Now, for Carolina's aspect of things, we can have the conversation about Bryce Young and all that. That's a whole different conversation. But for New Orleans in particular, I think to me, if they didn't do this, if they didn't beat Carolina in some level of convincing fashion, it would have been a little bit of a concern for them.
Yeah, KO, the thing is, you can only, like I said before, you can only beat and play who lines up in front of you. But I will tell you, I was still surprised that Derek Carr looked so good because that was one of the guys. Derek Carr, I don't know if y'all do fantasy football, but I do fantasy football.
Yeah.
I do it in 2 leagues. He was unclaimed in every single league. He was just sitting there, and he actually had a very good day for the New Orleans Saints. But Alontae Taylor with 3 sacks, that is super, super impressive. Somebody else that knows defense, the Pittsburgh Steelers, but we're not going to talk about their defense. We're going to talk about their offense. and why I believe they should stick with Justin Fields. We'll do that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Hims. That's right. Listen, men, when we leave the house, it's phone, wallet, keys. How's my hair look? But if you're experiencing hair loss, you might not be so confident with outside your door. It's time to get that confidence back and restore your hair with Hims. I've seen it actually work on people, and I have actually, as a barber for 34 years, referred clients to dermatologists to get just those ingredients. Start your free online visit at hims.com/lockedonnfl. That's hims.com/lockedonnfl for personalized hair loss treatment options. hims.com/lockedonnfl. Now listen, results vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil. Prescription products require an online consultation with hair care or healthcare professionals who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for full details. Important safety information. All right, segment number 2 here on Locked On NFL with my man Kevin Ostracker, my guest every single Tuesday here on Locked On NFL. We're going to break it down. Kevin covers the Ravens. I cover the Jaguars. Both teams are 0-1. That's okay. We'll get back. Again, it's a long season. We got 16 other weeks to go. So far, the Pittsburgh Steelers are 1-0. They did what Pittsburgh always does. They beat Atlanta in a very, very ugly game. It does not matter, though. It just goes in the win column as a win. And they did it with Justin Fields as the starting quarterback because Russell Wilson was out with an injury. Now, in my opinion, because they won, I don't think you can go back to Russell Wilson at this point, because he doesn't have that cachet anymore, like an automatic quarterback that you go back to. I just think you just need to leave Justin Fields out there so Pittsburgh can get a little bit of an identity and keep challenging people with Fields' ability to use his legs. I don't know how you feel about it, but for me, I think it's worth it to keep Justin Fields in the game and not go back to Russell Wilson.
I think to me, it's this. It's a whole situation where they needed to upgrade over Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky in some way. And I think both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are upgrades. But in terms of which one you keep on the field, I mean, I still don't trust Russell Wilson enough. I mean, he's an upgrade over what they had. But I just think that, honestly, even though the floor might be a little higher for Russell Wilson, even though that might be a little higher of a floor, I think this team needs an offensive ceiling. I think they need to prioritize the offensive ceiling over that floor. And you mentioned Justin Fields and his rushing ability. I still have question marks with both quarterbacks, not even to mention, I think Pittsburgh's wide receiver core is the worst in the entire league. I mean, it's George Pickens and literally nobody else. So that's another conversation. But with what they have, Fields to me is like that. He's that lottery ticket that with that defense,
right?
That's what it could be, because we saw Pittsburgh do it last year.
Mm-hmm.
The Mike Tomlin magic happened again. He took an offense that was pretty terrible for most of the season. Mason Rudolph was the guy that rose that offense out of the dirt and said, all right, we're going to go make the playoffs now. But that defense carried them to probably 5, 6, 7 wins last season alone, if not more, with poor, terrible quarterback play. If you just get not even good quarterback play, just average to below average quarterback play, this could be a team that, with the way Cincinnati looked in week 1, with the way Cleveland looked in week 1, even with some of the ways Baltimore looked in week 1, could be right up there at the top of a division. I still think it's going to be really competitive this year.
Well, let's hear what the counselor, Chris Carter, who covers Locked On Steelers, has to say about the victory.
Chris Carter here from the Locked On Steelers podcast, giving you your instant game reaction to the Steelers' 18-10 win over the Atlanta Falcons with Justin Fields as the starter. As we said on our Friday episode, there was some question about Russell Wilson. How would he play? Would he play with his calf injury reappearing in the middle of the week? The answer was a game day test of seeing how Russell Wilson felt. He was made the emergency third quarterback. Justin Fields goes in, gets the start, and the win for the Steelers. Now,
Did Justin Fields do anything to actually maybe hold on to a starting job for the Steelers? I don't think so. 17 of 23, 158 yards, no touchdowns, but no interceptions. Ultimately, this was a game where the Steelers said, hey, backup quarterback, go in and don't lose the game. Make a couple of big plays. I thought there were some good passes down the field that he made. One called back that shouldn't have been. All in all, I think Justin Fields did enough to show, hey, he's a good backup quarterback. The Steelers need to see more. We'll talk more about that on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Tune in for the Sunday night episode.
My man CC just said, hey, he's a backup. So he kind of disagrees with me a little bit. He says, man, he's the backup. Sometimes I play these videos early. I play them late because I don't want to sit here and just like piggyback off somebody else's thoughts. The thing is I said, hey, they should stick with him. CC made it very clear, though, that Russell Wilson is a starting quarterback. He's been there every day, like the local experts, like we are. We understand. We know what these teams need. But for me, I look at it and I just still think about Russell Wilson being in Denver. And I think it was just like, oh, my God, really? That dude, they said he wasn't even active the other day, Sunday, and he had on pads. It's like stuff like that just kind of creeps me out. It's like, man, come on with all that foolishness. You know what I'm saying? But
remember the high knees on the plane, and he was getting those drills in, and
he was talking to himself when he was doing the huddle before the game. He wasn't even gonna play. He was doing the huddle, acting like he was talking to people. I'm like, man, come on, man.
Russell Wilson has the Mr. Unlimited and the Danger Witch. Like, man, he has some all-time moments, man. I think him adding an inactive quarterback wearing pads, man, that just adds to his story. He's ever since he left Seattle, man, it's been a whole whirlwind for Russell Wilson.
It does. I'll never give up on quarterbacks, though, because I have seen Baker Mayfield in the last couple of days show off and show out. I even saw, this is funny, because Carolina had both of the guys I'm about to mention. They had Baker Mayfield. They also had Sam Darnold. And this is, to me, the biggest surprise of the weekend, because I thought Minnesota was right next to Carolina as having the worst roster in the league. They mollywopped the team that they played Sunday. Listen to my man Luke Braun here from Locked On Vikings.
Hard to ask for a better debut for the Minnesota Vikings. 28-6, the final up in New York. They go into MetLife and absolutely take it to the New York Giants. Defense humming. Sam Darnold humming. Starts the game with 12 straight completions, and this thing had basically no drama to it. Not something that we are very used to as Vikings fans, but hey, we'll take it. And on a day for Justin Jefferson where he was contained to just a 60-yard game for him, but everybody else had to step up, and they did, in particular Aaron Jones. There's so much to talk about in this one, and most of it is very good and exciting. The only bad news, Jordan Addison looked like he re-aggravated his ankle injury, so I kind of feel like he's going to miss time, but we'll see what that's all about. I'm about to go live here on Locked On Minnesota Sports, and then later I'll have a full Locked On Vikings for you, recapping the game. See you there.
You see, I love Luke, man, because Luke told you what he was going to do, and he probably did exactly what he said he was going to do as soon as he said he was going to do it. But the thing is I don't know if there's a fan base that I root for more than the Jaguars fan base than Minnesota, because it's almost like they don't do anything to anybody. I hear the Packers and the Lions and and the Bears, they all go at it, but Minnesota just kind of sits back there a little bit. And I was in North Dakota when I first went in the Air Force, and I was right next to the state of Minnesota, and people were really, really nice to me. So I'm always kind of rooting for them, and we saw all of the games when I was up there. But listen, I really thought that they were one of the 2 or 3 worst teams in the league, and Sam Darnold comes out there and carves up the New York Giants, who I thought had a really, really good defense, and may have put himself on a path to rejuvenate his career as a quarterback the same way Baker Mayfield did.
Yeah, I like Minnesota's skill position players. I think the Aaron Jones acquisition was really good. Obviously, I think Justin Jefferson almost became, not that he got underrated, but I feel like after his injury-plagued season last year, everybody's like, okay, well, Justin Jefferson. People kind of forgot about him, and now he has re-arrived in Minnesota. But this is also kind of what we were talking about earlier with the Panthers is, well, the Giants are a disaster. I mean, Dan, if I recall correctly, Wig, I was on here last week I said I'm so far out on Daniel Jones. I'm so far out on Brian Dable. And look, obviously Patricia's awesome. And if you said it, if the Giants were as good as Patricia is at her job, they'd be 17-0. But you know what? Unfortunately, that's not the case. And the Giants, they're kind of out of it. But I don't want to take away from Minnesota, because I do think you mentioned it. In an NFC North division that everybody's talking about Detroit and biting kneecaps, and Green Bay with Jordan Love and everything, even Chicago with Caleb Williams, Minnesota's a team that Do I think they make the playoffs?
Right.
Probably not. But I think that they could at least surprise some people and even upset a couple teams that could impact their playoff chances.
They're consistent. I mean, you think about all the turnover they've had from that year that Case Keenum threw their pass to Stephon Diggs. I mean, they've had a lot of turnover, and they still have been really, really consistent with Danielle Hunter and both him and Kirk Cousins leaving this year. And guess what? They're still hanging in there, man, and they're still doing these type of things. So shout out to them. Kevin O'Connell really has them doing some light stuff. And you know what? I think he's a really, really good football coach. I think he gets absolutely the most out of that team. And if he ever gets enough talent, Minnesota could be a real, real problem because they're so fundamentally sound in the way that they handle their business. We're going to talk about two AFC East teams here in just a second. The teams that, not the New York Jets, who lost the game against the San Francisco 49ers in convincing fashion or unconvincing fashion, but we're going to talk about the two other teams who were scheduled to win the division, either Miami or Buffalo. We'll do that in just a second here in the third and final segment of Locked On NFL. All right, we got to let y'all know about FanDuel, man. You already know about it because I've been telling you about FanDuel. I have at least for about 6 years down here on Locked On. FanDuel is the absolute truth, man. And I'm going to tell you something. They have something a little bit different for you right now. And you never heard of this. Listen, now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5, just $5, and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now, I'm telling you, does not mean that you're going to have to win. All you got to do is make that $5 wager, and you'll get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season game on Sunday afternoon, out of market game, right? When your team isn't playing at home. All you need is a Google account, the current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com, download America's #1 sportsbook. Here's what you need to do. Make sure you go on there, read all the literature before you make your little, your little wagers. Make sure before you do your little fantasy, and make sure you tap in to FanDuel.com. That's right. It's America's #1 sports book. Make sure you tap in right now and before September 22nd, and you can get $5 for a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV. That is FanDuel. All right, third and final segment here, Locked On NFL. Going to run through the NFC East really, really fast. The team that I cover, the Jacksonville Jaguars, lost a heartbreaker to the Miami Dolphins. It doesn't seem like it, though, if you listen to Kyle Krabs, because I tuned into his show and he didn't seem happy. And I guess this is the difference between having an expectation of winning and when you win and you don't win like you want to win. I mean, you ain't real happy about it. Listen to what Kyle Krabs had to say about the Miami Dolphins.
Game balls. Javon Holland. There's a sequence of 2 plays in this game that you all know if you watched the game. But if you didn't, just know this is why every moment counts. Every play can be the play that turns the game on its head. There are 5 minutes and 26 seconds left in the third quarter. Jacksonville is up 10 points and has just forced a punt from the Dolphins after taking a sack to go out of scoring territory. Big gut punch. Great punt. Pin him in. Okay, great. Tank Bigsby goes for 26. And Gabe Davis runs a stop route on Kader Kohu for 22. And then Travis Etienne gets pushed out of bounds for a 12-yard gain and then another first down. Jacksonville gets down to the 13-yard line. There's 2 minutes and 27 seconds left in the third quarter. It's the 6th play of the possession. They've completely flipped the field. They're in scoring territory. You're just sitting here hoping your breath that you force a field goal to keep it a 2-score game. A 2-score game. Etienne rips one up the middle. Javon Holland with the peanut punch. Punches out the ball. From Travis Etienne, the ball squirts into the end zone. Kader Kohu falls on top of it on the back line for a recovery in the end zone. You go from going down 24-7 to possessing the ball, and it's 17-7. On the very next play, you score an 80-yard touchdown.
That broke my heart, man, because I played that, and this is self-therapy, and I'm going to have to admit that here on Locked On NFL, because he's exactly right. If you listen to that podcast, and make sure you check him out on Locked On Dolphins, you'll understand he was not happy. And the reason why he was not happy is because Jacksonville dominated the game all the way up until the end of the third quarter. They were going in for a walk-in touchdown, and Travis Etienne had the ball punched out. From that point, the game totally turned around, and the Dolphins outscored the Jaguars 13-0 down the stretch, and they won the game. So it's all about momentum. It's all about one play. The thing is, though, the reason why I pointed that out is they won, but they expected to win the game, and they did not play as well as Jacksonville, but they still happened to win the game. It's just a different mindset, man, when you figure out a way to win games that you're not supposed to.
Yeah, there are pretty losses and there are ugly wins.
Yeah.
And this for them was, for example, the Ravens, I thought that was a pretty loss to Kansas City. You know, they came back, almost won the game, and everybody's in Baltimore was like, oh, okay, the back-to-back champs, that works out. That's okay. Like, disappointing, but fine. For the Dolphins, it was, oh, you know, we're going to go and whoop up on Jacksonville, and, you know, they can't beat us, they can't touch us, and, well, they got down big early, and Kyle said it there. If Jacksonville ended up scoring on that possession, the game probably is over.
No, they blow them out if that happens.
Yeah.
I'm quite sure. I guarantee you that game would have been over, because they would have knew Miami wouldn't have had time, and they would have pinned their ears back and did some stuff with the pass rush and did some stuff with coverage, and Miami would have never recovered.
Yeah. So it's exactly that, where Miami, I think, has high expectations this season, as does Jacksonville. I think expectations are all across the league. And, you know, week one expectations are always like, okay, fresh slate, new start. Let's see what we can do. Every team kind of has that. But for Miami, it's okay. They went and they added some pieces on defense, and another year with Tyreek and Jalen Waddle and, you know, Devon A-Chain in year two. How's he going to do? And Tua, hopefully he can take another step. But when you win like that, and there are so many mistakes that happen and you don't win the way you think, it can kind of put a damper in, hey, you're 1-0, but like, does it really feel good to be 1-0? I mean, obviously in the grand scheme of things, yes, you won the game, but there are other underlying issues that have to be solved.
You're right. And another team that has those issues is Buffalo. We thought coming into the season that Buffalo, because they did not have a number one wide receiver, because it appeared that they probably would struggle in their passing game, they go out and score 37 points yesterday and have a little bit of a blowout. And my man Khalil Shakir shows out, and they still got Keon Coleman who caught big passes and Curtis Samuel underneath, but they spent a lot of time with a whole bunch of tight ends on the field. And I want you to hear Joe Marino actually talk about their actual personnel in the game and how they were able to do this. And I want to ask you this specifically because you cover the Baltimore Ravens, and they did the same thing for a lot of years. So listen.
I've taken the time to study the all-22 coaches film from the Buffalo Bills Week 1 win over the Arizona Cardinals, and I'm sharing my top takeaways with you today on Locked On Bills. At tight end, Dalton Kincaid, 51 of 61 snaps. Dawson Knox, 35. Quentin Morris, 6. And then Alec Anderson, 9 snaps as the jumbo tight end. And then the Bills enjoyed all 5 of their starting offensive linemen playing all 61 snaps.
So listen, the reason I brought that up, especially with you, with the 2 tight end sets, you got Andrews and Lively in Baltimore. I wanted to ask you, can you really win? Is it sustainable for you to win that way with so many teams going to all of these wide receivers running all over the place? And obviously that's not really the style in Baltimore, and it doesn't appear it's going to be the style in Buffalo. How sustainable is that for the long haul?
I think if you have the personnel, you can do it. And I'll even take it back for Baltimore in 2019. This is before, you know, guys like Isaiah, like the Charlie Cole were there. But the reason that 2019 team was so successful was because they played to their personnel. And the way that they did it was even they had 3 tight end sets. So they were running 3 tight ends out there at the same time. And they would be able to just dominate you on the ground. And then teams would creep up into the box to try to stop it. You know, if you're getting gashed on the ground, you're going to try to put people in a box, try to stop it.
Right.
And the Ravens would still put in the same personnel, but then they would work play action off of that. And they used RPOs a bunch. They would do RPOs off of that. And you would just send Mark Andrews over the middle. Hayden Hurst on that team went in the middle, even Nick Boyle. And so for Baltimore in particular, and all these other teams that want to run a bunch of 2 tight end sets and heavy personnel, if you can effectively run the ball, if you can gash teams on the ground and force them to be concerned about it, you can get stuff over the top. You can get stuff in the middle of the field, especially for a guy like Dalton Kincaid, who's very talented. And other guys as well. We know Dawson Knox played a big role there as a number 1 guy for a couple of years before Kincaid came in. And so now, even though Buffalo doesn't have that pure number 1 receiver, no more Stephon Diggs, right? He's no longer there. It can still be effective if you spread the ball out and play to your personnel. So even though the Diggs loss was a big one, I still think that with Buffalo and what they have, obviously for the Ravens, it's Lamar, for the Bills, it's Josh Allen, for these other teams, other quarterbacks, you play to those guys' strengths, and I think you can win a lot of games.
I think what they have too is Josh Allen, even though he's not as dynamic a runner as Lamar Jackson, he's still a very, very good running quarterback. That's like saying that Cam Newton ain't as good as running as Michael Vick. You know, he's still a very good running quarterback, but then he can beat you with his arm. So you really do have to respect those guys, even though they're not, name brand guys right now. He can still get it done. And I do believe the fact that he doesn't have somebody barking in his ear all the time. I think the coaches basically cleared all of that stuff out, and now they're going to lead with him. Don't be surprised if Buffalo, and I will be surprised because I didn't pick them to finish. I didn't pick them to be a playoff team. They kind of appear to be like that team. They lost Jordan Poyer. They lost all of these veteran guys, but it's almost like they're saying, nah, dude, we had players in development. We're good. They let people go because they knew that they had people who can play behind them. I'll tell you what, man, we don't have to play behind anybody else because you'll be here with me every single Tuesday. My man, Kevin Ostriker, is going to knock it down with me every single Tuesday here on Locked On NFL. The new Locked On NFL is here. Locked On NFL is now 2 shows every day. First, the madman Tyler Rowland, and he is a madman, right? We know that. He kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL Espresso, and then stop by the barbershop right here with me, Tony Wiggins, for some real NFL talk. Add in the Locked On local experts like Kevin Ostriker, and you get unprecedented NFL insight, hot topics, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL. It's twice a day. Make the madman Tyler Rowland and me, the barber Tony Wiggins, your second listen at the new Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Kevin will do it again next Tuesday.
Oh, yeah. Looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, man. The Ravens, they're going to be all right?
I think so. Big game against the Raiders. If they lose that game, we're going to have some conversations.
We got to have some conversations. The Jags play Cleveland, so it's all about us beating those the AFC North.
Yeah, get a big win for me. That's what I.
Yeah. I know, man.
That's a win for me in my book.
Yeah, we got you covered, dog. We'll take care of it. All right. Until next time, make sure you guys take care, and we'll see you next time here on Locked On NFL.